Welcome to the Clique podcast. I'm Dani Watson, a mindset and manifestation expert and founder of the Clique, a company that helps women overcome their fears and limiting beliefs to create a life and business that they love. Within this podcast, I will help you get clear on what you want, identify the blocks that are holding you back, transform your mindset and raise your vibration so that you can co-create magic with the universe. If you are looking to design a life that truly sets your soul on fire and manifest more success and abundance, then you are in the right place. Hello ladies, and welcome to a brand new episode. We are now in full summer mode, especially where I live in the south of Spain. It is hot, which I am absolutely loving. It's just been so nice to be hanging out by the pool with my kids, going down to the beach and just, enjoying the glorious sunshine. So I hope wherever you are in the world, you are enjoying the kickoff of summer too. Now let's dive into this episode because we are going to be talking about patterns of financial self-sabotage. Money is one of those topics that I probably feel like I don't talk about often enough, given how well received the money episodes are. Whenever I release a podcast episode or I create content related to manifesting money, money blocks, the energetics of money, I often get a really great response from people saying, I want more of this. So what are patterns of financial self-sabotage then? Well, these are things that we do often unconsciously to repel money from our lives. So it's maybe a resistance to having more money. Maybe we do things to block the money from coming in. Maybe we avoid doing certain things to avoid making more money. And now at a surface level, you might be thinking, well, I'm not guilty of this because I'm doing all of the things. I want to call more money into my life. But if financially you are not where you want to be right now, chances are there is some way that you are perhaps subconsciously self-sabotaging when it comes to your finances. And I want to dive into the common patterns of self-sabotage that I see and unpick those a little bit more. And maybe you identify with some of these things. Now, the first thing is actually just avoiding, again, perhaps this is at a subconscious level, actively avoiding doing the things that will allow you to bring more money into your life. The first couple of months of me launching my coaching business, I've spoken about this before. They were a bit of a flop. It was really month 3 that things changed dramatically. And what had really happened within the space of those 2 months was that I'd discovered money mindset work. And I started to really dig into my narrative and my programming around money. And this pattern of self-sabotage was definitely something that I found myself experiencing, where I was actively avoiding at a subconscious level, bringing money in. Now, this on the surface seems crazy because I was a new business owner and something that I was absolutely desperate for was to leave my job and to be able to become a coach full time. So making money was one of my primary goals at this point. However, it was really interesting when I started to kind of face up to where am I resisting money, that I realized that I had this pattern of really avoiding doing the things that would bring in the money into my business. I was making it very difficult for myself to make money. So let me give you an example of this. I had built a very small audience at this point. I didn't really have much of a following on social media, but I had a small following there. Now, rather than making any kind of offer to get on a discovery call with me or to sell my coaching or to sell my programs, I was instead being very busy with all of the creative side of my business. So I was giving lots and lots of value. I was creating pretty posts. I was messing around with my branding. And for me, this gave me a sense of accomplishment because I felt I'm very busy. And I was keeping myself very busy. And I was working very hard on my business. But in terms of the time I was putting in to try and actually sell my coaching, this part was very minimal. And it was a bit of a wake-up call to realize that I was saying to myself, I'm working really, really hard on my business. But actually, it was distracting myself from actually doing the things that I knew would actually bring the money in. One of those things in particular was actually selling to my audience, or at least making an offer at that initial discovery call. This was something that I was actively avoiding. And when I started to dig into this, I realized that I had a huge amount of resistance to actually asking for money for my coaching. I was a very new coach at the time, and my biggest fear was, what if somebody pays me and I can't deliver? Even though I'd been through a lot of training, even though deep down I knew that I was going to be great at this, I would rather not sell at all than sell to somebody and then be unhappy or dissatisfied with the coaching that I was providing them. So the weight of responsibility and the weight of being able to deliver at the highest possible standards, that pressure that I was putting on myself was causing me to resist selling my services, selling my coaching, and therefore avoiding actually making money. When I also started to dig into this, I realized that if I wasn't actively selling, it was almost like I was still holding a part of myself back from my business, because I wasn't going all in at this stage. I wasn't saying to myself, I'm going to go all in to try and get as many clients as I can. I was really holding myself back, and it kind of gave me this level of security, this level of safety, because if I didn't make my business work, if I failed, if things didn't work out for me, I could then say, well, I didn't go all in on this anyway. I didn't really sell myself. I didn't really try and make money from my business. I kind of just sort of dabbled in it, but I never went fully all in. And it almost felt like it was then therefore a protection mechanism. Now, contrast that with, let's say I did go all in to try and get clients, to try and make sales, to try and generate an income, and it didn't work. It would then almost feel as if, well, I've failed at this because I've gone all in and nothing has actually worked. And what we're really saying at this moment is, I've given all of me and all of me was not good enough because look, nothing actually worked for me. So in a way, holding myself back was this protection mechanism, protecting myself from that fear of failure and from those feelings of I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I'm not capable of this. Now, something that can really help heal this pattern of self-sabotage is just bringing awareness to where you are slipping into avoidance tactics. The reason why we avoid is going to be different for everybody. So maybe it's you're avoiding making money because it's that fear of responsibility, because it's that fear of actually not making money and then feeling, not good enough or not worthy enough. So there's going to be lots of different reasons why we avoid, but the first step is just to actually recognize those patterns of avoidance. So let's say, for example, you are a business owner, or maybe you're looking to start a business, and this business is a way for you to change your financial reality. In what ways are you keeping yourself busy within your business, but actually avoiding doing the things that could make you money sooner rather than later? So going back to my example, it was doing lots and lots of things within my business, making my website look pretty, spending lots and lots of time on these pretty social media images, which of course are important, but ultimately the thing that I knew deep down that would make me sales was actually just getting somebody onto a call and talking directly to somebody about my coaching, and then actually, making an offer for them to join my program. These are the things that I was avoiding. Now, another pattern of financial self-sabotage is actually making money harder than what it needs to be. And this is actually very much linked to the avoidance of money, because if we make the creation of wealth within our life, if we make this a really difficult, challenging task, what we're ultimately doing is we're avoiding making money for ourselves. So these two are linked. But this one, how this shows up is that we try and make things more complicated than what they need to be. So rather than just allowing making money to be the easiest and simplest possible thing that we can do, we try and set the benchmark super high for what we need to do and what we perhaps need to create in order to bring money in. So a good example of this was going back to the earlier days of my coaching business, where I was doing a lot of work, working one-on-one with my clients. And I got to a point where I had a number of these discovery calls scheduled for women that were wanting to inquire about my coaching. And rather than taking these calls and, signing up these clients, I decided, actually, I'm going to cancel these calls, because what I would like to do, I would like to be able to give my clients access to this incredible online program. So when they sign up to work with me one-on-one, we don't just have the coaching sessions, we also have this online program as well. Now, that in itself, there's nothing wrong with doing that. But what I was actually doing was I was avoiding making money in that moment. And I was actually making things way more complicated than what they needed to be. I had women there that were ready to pay me, ready to start working with me. And I realized actually that getting the one-on-one clients, it got to a point where it started to feel quite easy. I was like, wow, I'm getting paid to do this amazing work with women. It's not really commanding huge amounts of my time. I show up for a session, I do a 1 hour session. They're incredibly happy with that session. Maybe there's a little bit of communication in between sessions, but on the whole, this feels fun. There's no stress, there's no pressure. This is really enjoyable. And in my mind, making money couldn't be so easy and enjoyable. I had to prove myself through working hard. So I had subconsciously created this pattern of sabotage where every time it felt like money was coming in relatively easy into my business, I would make things more difficult for myself by adding new things into my to-do list. So adding in this really complex, program where, yes, okay, that ultimately was something that I wanted to do. But it was almost like I had to put the making money part on hold until this program was created. So rather than just taking those calls and signing up those clients there and then, I said to myself, no, I need to create this program first. And I see this pattern play out so often, especially with women within the coaching industry, where they have all of these very simple ways where they could start generating an income within their business, but they feel like, okay, well, maybe that's too easy, maybe that's too simple, and they try to make things more complicated. So a really good example is, assuming that they have to have this really fancy website and, a fancy photo shoot and this online program before they can start selling something. When the reality is they've got women in their audience that have already built up their relationship with. The simplest thing to do would be to invite those women onto a call, offer one-on-one coaching. That is super simple, but extremely effective at the same time, where you are just coaching via Zoom. There's not a lot of tech that's involved there. You don't need to create this big program, and just keep things, simple first. So ask yourself, am I trying to make things more complicated than they need to be when it comes to generating an income? If this was easy, if I was challenged to try and find the simplest, easiest way to make money within my life or within my business right now, what would that look like? Again, often we try and complicate things when making money can feel easy. Now, the other pattern of financial self-sabotage I see is this fear mentality around, I've got to hoard my money, I've got to keep hold of it. Often this comes back to conditioning from perhaps parents or society that tells us, we've got to save our money, we've got to invest it wisely, and, we've got to really kind of hold on to money. Now, what we're really saying here is that I'm not able to create more. We're really looking at this money from this lack mentality. So maybe you've been able to create a certain amount of money within your life. So maybe that's through your career, maybe that's through your business, and you have this pot of money, but there's a lot of resistance to actually spending it, because from your mind, you're saying, well, if I spend it, that money is then depleted. And what we're saying is that money is not a constant source. It's not constantly flowing into our life. And that's really how we want to be thinking about money. Just as we breathe in air, let's say you're breathing in a big gulp of air into your lungs are filled. Now, unless you release some of that air, you can't take in your next breath. So there needs to be this constant in and out of our breath in order for life to continue. And it's very much the same when it comes to money. This in and out, this constant flow of money coming into our life and, freely allowing money to go without sort of that tension around it. Think about when you spend money, how do you really feel, especially when it comes to those big investments? Does it feel like an expansive process for you where you're like, yes, I'm so excited to invest in myself or spend money in this way because I trust that money is constantly flowing into my life? Or do you feel when you hand over money, you're sensing that feeling of loss, that emptiness, that I've lost this money now, or you kind of sense that gaping hole in your bank or in your wallet? How do you feel when handing money over? A very simple phrase that I still come back to time and time again is there's plenty more where that came from. For me, I've got very good at being able to be very comfortable making big investments in my life without overthinking it, without slipping into that, oh my goodness, what have I just done? And, things like buying properties, like investing in business programs, investing in mentors, investing in team members. Sometimes these are very substantial investments, but I always try and bring it back to there's plenty more where that came from. Money is just this energetic exchange. And if I can bring money into my life previously, I can very much do it again. The trouble is when we hoard on to money again, it's looking at things from this lack mentality. And this isn't to say that we cannot save money, but we want to be doing that from a place of love and expansion rather than fear and panic. So when we hoard money because we're fearing that, I don't have enough and I can't make more, that's very much a restrictive lack mindset. Whereas if we are saving money because we're excited to purchase something in the future, or we know that that's going towards a specific purchase, maybe you're saving for a house, maybe you're saving for the trip of a lifetime, it's much more of an expansive feeling because it's not just hoarding on to money for the sake of it. It's not just saving for the sake of it. We're not just saving money to create a safety blanket. Again, what we're saying here, if we're trying to create a safety blanket for ourselves, what we're saying here is that at some point in my future, I believe I'm going to be in financial turmoil and I'm going to need this pot of money to support me. We're almost focusing on the worst case scenario rather than the opposite of, I'm saving this money because I'm looking to invest it in something or spend it on something exciting in my future. Now, the flip side of this is another pattern of financial self-sabotage where we are very unintentional with the way that we spend money, and we really kind of don't feel comfortable having money, so we try and spend it as quickly as possible. So a really classic example of this is when people who've never really had any money before win the lottery and then they very, very quickly go bankrupt. I've also seen this pattern in women that I've worked with where they've actually had very good jobs or businesses where they're making great money, but it's almost like they're trying to spend that money as quickly as possible. And they're spending it on things that really they're being quite unintentional about. It's almost like they're looking for things that are going to give them a quick fix of feel good. But that is very, very short-lived. So one example could be a client of mine who was very much, pretty much spending all of her money on online shopping. So clothes, designer handbags, designer shoes. Now, I'm here for that. I am, not here to judge what people want to spend their money on. I love to sometimes spend my money on quite frivolous things like that. But making sure that it's very much a conscious and intentional decision rather than a way to feel worthy and deserving, rather than it being a way to feel like you're trying to prove yourself worthy or prove your success to others. So this is sometimes how I see this pattern playing out, where people are spending money in this way where it's really, they're trying to get that sort of quick fix of dopamine, where they feel good. Purchasing something online, for example, they get, a shiny new pair of shoes. It feels good for a short period of time, but that feeling is short-lived. But on the other side, it's also a way to prove their status to other people. Now, I especially see this play out where women are wanting to kind of prove themselves within their business perhaps, or within their careers, where they're saying, look how successful I am because I have these material things. Now again, like sometimes we just genuinely really want these things, but a good question to ask yourself is, if other people did not know that I had this, would I still want it as much as what I do? What is the true reason why I really want to be in possession of this thing? Is this really in alignment with who I am and what I really want? Or am I trying to purchase this thing because I feel like it will make me look a certain way to other people? I've started to be a lot more mindful about the things that I spend my money on. And don't get me wrong, I do love designer things. I love the odd, designer handbag, and I love beautiful things, not necessarily designer, but I love quality things. I love things that feel luxurious. They don't necessarily need to be a brand that people know. But I do like to spend my money on things that really bring me joy. And, I'm a bit of a magpie. I'm not going to lie. But I've recognized sometimes where perhaps I've followed along with trends and I felt like I've wanted things because of how that would perhaps be perceived on social media. And I feel like bringing a lot more intentionality behind what I'm spending my money on has been a really amazing experience for me. So again, it's not to say that we cannot spend our money, but it's being very intentional about why we're spending it. What are we trying to achieve by spending our money? Are we trying to spend our money because deep down we don't feel comfortable having it? Again, it can often be tied to this worthiness piece, this I don't feel worthy or deserving to be financially wealthy. I don't believe that I deserve money. I don't believe that I'm good enough. I don't believe that I am, worthy of amazing things. And then when we really, if that's our belief system, one of the quickest ways to reinforce that belief is by ridding ourselves of any money that we have. It's like, I don't believe I deserve this, therefore I'm going to spend it as quickly as possible. So do you resonate with any of these? I'd be interested to know, if some of these kind of are prevalent within your life, or perhaps you've recognized a different pattern of financial self-sabotage. Now, something you might be thinking is, well, how do I start healing this? If I've recognized this pattern, how do I start healing it? And I think the first step to healing anything is really just that awareness piece. So I mentioned this earlier, just bringing that awareness to how money is showing up in your life, where you're perhaps avoiding money, where you're perhaps holding on to money, where you are unintentionally or unconsciously just trying to get rid of your money, and really what is your motivation behind the purchases that you make. What is the driving force there? So it's just bringing that awareness into it. Going then deeper, it would be looking at, your patterns of or rather your subconscious programming when it comes to money. So where does this pattern trace back to? So is it from your parents? Is it from not having enough as a child? Is it from not being, being in a household where you were never able to really spend money, and therefore now that you've got money, you're trying to sort of spend it as quickly as possible? So normally any pattern that we're experiencing can be traced back to our childhood. And then it's really a case of going into the root cause of that pattern and healing the pattern at the roots. So this is where things like subconscious reprogramming come into. That's something that we train our students on within the Clique Academy. And, this is a very powerful part of healing any unwanted pattern of self-sabotage, is that going into the subconscious mind and looking at, well, what beliefs are actively shaping this pattern of behavior in my life? But yeah, I'd be interested to know, do any of you resonate with this? Come and say hello, Dani_Watson_coaching on Instagram. Let me know if you have any suggestions for topics you'd like covered on this podcast, guests that you would like to see on this podcast as well. I'm excited to hear from you on Instagram. And I will leave it there. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will catch you on the next episode. Thanks, ladies. If you are wanting to build your own successful online coaching business, make sure to check out Freedom, Abundance and Impact. our free 10-day business and mindset course for coaches and aspiring coaches. To access, simply head to wearetheclique.com and click free course in the menu.